Honestly speaking, photography is simply a tool for me to express a lot of ideas. I'm actually a passionate nature lover and wildlife enthusiast. So for me, photography is just a medium of expression. It's just a tool that I use to express many things related to my actual passion, which is nature and wildlife.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw. Your photographs are all just bonkers great. The next one is entitled Puma Patagonia, and you really understand framing and light, and so some people describe photographers as light chasers, right? So in this case, what we have is the foreground is it's in that golden hour, I guess, so it's during sunset, maybe sunrise, and the foreground is this hill of very kind of rough, dry, brownish kind of grass. In it, and sorry, in the background is this very dark gray, super sharp, but still dark gray, and really kind of, when you look at inhospitable mountain peaks, very very sharp peaks. So this looks like okay, the title of the photograph is Patagonia. So you know that this mountain range is relatively new, so the peaks are extremely sharp. There's a bit of snow. There's a lot of exposed rock. The sky is very turbulent. There's a bit of sun, a bit of sky, but what makes the image is this puma that's, I guess, resting on its back haunches, but its front are kind of extended, and so it's just kind of looking a little bit towards you and beyond you. Maybe it's looking at the sun, and it's an incredible photograph again. So what's the story behind this image?
So for people who probably are seeing this image would recognize this landscape. It's a very famous landscape in Patagonia, in Chile. This mountain range, this national park is called Torres del Paine, which translates to the Towers of Paine. So as you can see, these towers in the background, if you ask me, they are broken after a volcanic eruption or something like that. Mm-hmm. You can see the big, the caldera of this volcano there, which is a light gray portion of the frame.
Wow.
So I'm in this national park, which is not, to be honest, very few people go here to find the pumas. There's a lot of trekkers, hikers, campers, mountaineers, bikers who go here to enjoy the adventure of Patagonia. So in the southern part of Patagonia, it's a town called Puerto Natales, which is in the southern part of Chile. Maybe 1,000 miles from the bottom tip of South America. So here, pumas live in the area, and some private ranches, which are hundreds and hundreds of hectares of private land, are used to graze horses and maybe cattle and stuff like that. But then there are also the natural prey species of the puma, which is called the guanaco, which is a cousin of the llama. Mm-hmm. Now, of late, there are some ranches where pumas are sighted quite often, and it's not even 10 years since people are able to say, I'm going to South America, I'm going to Chile, I'm going to Patagonia, I'm going to Towers of Paine to see a puma, because 20 years ago, who could imagine you will go to a place and you'll find a puma. Mm-hmm. So today it's happening there. So I was here. The way this works is you drive a car, you go around different places, you stop the car, you climb up a ridge, use a binoculars or a spotting scope and start scanning the place. At a distance, you will see some guanaco which are very anxious, or let's say they are alarming, or they are calling out, or they are afraid of a predator, and the only predator which lives here is the puma. Jaguars don't live south so far south here, so pumas are the mountain lions, as the Americans call it. Mm-hmm. So what we did on this particular day was stop the car at sunrise. I remember 6:15, 6:20 in the morning. It was lovely light. And we started looking around, and we heard some guanaco calls up in the mountain. And we took the car off-road and started driving up on these, paths which are on the hill. Mm-hmm. And we stopped the car, and there were 4 pumas, which are probably 3 cubs and a mother, which were on the ridge of that hill. Oh, wow. Against a beautiful orange sky. So you're not seeing that photo here, but I'm just describing my first sight. Mm-hmm. But then We stopped the car, pulled out our tripods, the super telephoto lenses, and a 70-200 millimeter lens hanging on the side, and we started walking towards the puma on foot. We were following the puma, and I remember at least half a mile of following the pumas, taking multiple shots. They were sitting in many places. There were three cubs and a mum, and it was a tough situation. It's the mountains. It's walking on foot with a super telephoto lens. I remember carrying an 800 millimeter lens on a tripod with a fluid head, and I'm not the fittest of people in the planet, along with my heavy bag, because I didn't want to leave my bag half a kilometer away to pull out a lens if needed. So I carried everything on my back, the tripod and the lens, and I started walking along. Wherever possible, I would put the tripod on the ground and take some shots, and it went on for about half an hour. And it was becoming difficult for us to catch up with the puma. We were now starting to just trail the pumas by 100 meters all the time,
Right.
which meant we would only see the back all the time. And then we were trying to, go parallel to the puma as much as possible. And everybody were tired. I do know there was a guy who runs marathon. He was tired as well. It's not just the average fitness guy like me. Everybody were tired.
So what's the elevation? Because you must be at elevation, right?
Sure. I don't think it's too high. I don't remember the exact elevation, but it's below 1,000 meters for sure.
Okay.
It's on the coast of it's not too high.
Okay.
So it's not too high for sure. I think it's below 1,000 meters for sure.
Okay.
It was not the altitude problem at all. It's just that climbing up and down hills was a problem. So here's where I realized the puma was sitting. Especially this one. This is a male cub. We named him Simba, and everybody calls him Simba there. The others have different names. And when I saw him sitting, I was much behind where I am right now, towards his hind, about 100 meters towards his hind. And then I stopped. I took a couple of breaths. I took a couple of telephoto lens pictures, and then I realized I've completely ignored the background,
Right.
which was the mountain range. So I immediately started pulling out my 70-200, which was hanging on my side, because it was too far from me for getting a portrait of the puma. A close-up of the puma. So immediately I realized it was an habitat image in the making. The first thing I did was call out all the people in my group and tell them, hey guys, I want all of you to come where I am. Don't ask me why, please run soon. And people didn't realize why I'm doing that, because all of them are looking at the puma.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I'm able to envision a perspective which is just beyond the puma. And a couple of them made it, and some of them stood 50 meters behind, 30 meters behind, thinking they're near me. But whoever came closer to me, because I couldn't shout because there's an animal there.
Yeah.
You can't keep yelling instructions like you're in a safari car. So you had to be soft and make sure the puma doesn't run away. And it's a wild animal, mind you. It's and not just one of it. There are four of them.
Yeah.
Though the second one is just about 15 meters behind this one, and you can't see it because of the elevated mound. So all I was envisioning here was a great a shot with all the elements of the story coming in one frame. Like the place where we are. People who know Patagonia know the Towers of Paine. There's no need to explain it if you've seen the place or seen the posters.
Yeah.
And then the moment they see this photo, they know it was shot in Patagonia. I didn't even have to title it for people who have been here.
Sure.
Of course, if you've not been here, you wouldn't know the place. But then this was a great opportunity to show a habitat with a landscape, which is what I love to do in wildlife photography. Ryan, I want to tell something to photography enthusiasts, if you allow me, please.
No, this is
Sure,
I'm here for
sure.
you.
So what I meant was, I'm going to say something that you've not asked me. So I met a scientist who is also inclined towards art once. I was very proud of my first few tiger photos and elephant photos, which are pretty sharp, close-ups. You can count the whiskers and stuff like that. I had a half an hour drive with him from the place where we met to our respective homes. And he asked me, Jayanth, I want you to tell me, what do you think the tiger looked like in the medieval times during, let's say, 500 AD, 1500 AD and stuff like that. So I said, exactly the way it looks like now. I don't think there's any difference in the tiger 500 years ago. Then he said, what about 1,000 years ago when, the Indian continent was raided or invaded by Mughals and Mongols and stuff like that. So what do you think the tiger was back then? I said, absolutely the same. He said, what about 2,000 years ago? How do you think the tiger looked like? I said, 2000 years is not too much for an animal to change the way it looks like. Probably very similar to how it looks like now. Then he said, you get the point, Jayanth. So how much more can you keep showing a portrait of an animal which has not changed for 2000 years and which will not even change for another 2000 years, perhaps? So what do you think is the need for you to do wildlife photography? And that got me thinking, and I realized, hey, it's not the animal that is changing, it's the world around the animal that is changing. And as a wildlife photographer, I'm actually a nature photographer with a subset. So I would use wild animals as a prop to show the landscape.
Got it.
Maybe when I show a polar bear with a glacier today, and 10 years later, somebody looks at my image and they'll see the same glacier and they'll realize, oh my goodness, the glacier is such a small glacier now. Look, 10 years ago it was like this. And that is something that photos can show and tell stories to narrate larger stories rather than showing a whisker of a tiger or a polar bear or a puma. And that's why I really changed the way I looked at wildlife photography some 10 years ago. And I always want to make a habitat picture of an animal to show the world of the animal, and if possible, make a beautiful frame that can be printed.
Yeah. No, I like how you articulated that. I haven't heard it put in that way before. And for me, like hearing you put it that way is it's a nice new, let's call it a intuition pump, where you can think, oh, well, that gets me thinking as well. And very good point. Very good point. And so I think one of the reasons why I commented on the landscape of the mountains, right, being clearly quite young, it's like when you see these exposed mountains that are tall and sharp, and you have the snow and everything, it feels so elemental, in the sense that there's not tons of vegetation, there's not incredible amounts of wildlife, even though there is some, but there's a kind of purity, but also the simplicity of having things pulled away and removed. And so in this, like when I see your photograph, so the backdrop of the mountain range, which is just rock and snow and sky, and so it's black and white and the clouds of the sky, and then in the foreground you have this very sharp, more living subject matter, I guess, and in it is the puma. And as you say, there is that story and there's that connection. So do you feel that kind of level needs to be there, to have the many kinds of levels they need to be there in order to create that narrative, so that people can react to it even more? Or do you worry about your audience reacting to the images as much as when you're in there? Like, how much of your brain is just looking at the scene, and how much of your brain is thinking about, okay, I need to create something that people are going to respond to later?
Sure. I have a very, very solid answer for this, because I keep answering this myself every now and then, and
Great.
it changes over time.
Great.
I keep asking my workshop participants, who do you take pictures for? And most people say it's for myself. I do it for myself. I feel the thrill of it. I feel the satisfaction of it. It gives me, a lot of, peace of mind, and it's like meditation and all of that, which is absolutely true. In my case, I have spoken about this in a couple of TED Talks of mine, where I say I'm not a passionate photographer. I'm a passionate nature lover, and photography is my tool. So I keep remembering that and not just saying it, because for me, when I'm on the field, I would get the same pleasure of what anybody can get out of this site when I just see it. I don't need a photo of it if it is only for myself.
Right.
So I always make sure when I'm clicking a photo, I consider it, it's a very strong opinion. I consider it a bit of a sacrifice of personal pleasure in order to show something to the rest of the world. That's the kind of strong opinion I have about that, which is why I kind of always want to make images which are for others and not for myself. Because I am there to see the animal myself, and I've seen it many times. I keep going again. I will see it again, I know. So when I think of most frames that I click for as pieces of art that I want to show it to an audience and not make it only for myself or my satisfaction and pleasure, I think the output is going to be different, because you'll start wondering, what would I want to show to an audience? What would they think about it? What would they infer from a scene? What is it that I can include so that the story is complete?
Mm-hmm.
Because not everybody is going to look at this picture and listen to my podcast in my life.
Yeah.
So they would just look at the photo, and the photo has to communicate to them as well. So for me, it's a very clear purpose. Photography for me is done so that I show pictures to an audience. I watch wildlife for a personal pleasure. I take pictures for clearly a larger audience, and my goal is to produce pretty pictures to attract more and more people towards nature and wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
And once they are in this community, then they are eligible to be educated about the other problems.
Right, right. Wow. Well, thank you. That's very well said. And I'm going to use that as the segue or the stepping stone to move to your fourth image, which in a way I didn't know it was going to be like this, but it kind of what I kind of it, you know I'm a little bit cheeky sometimes, so I kind of like the fact that it's going to contradict a little bit of what you had just said. So, is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So, if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw.